So we don't want to leave these things plugged in because we're wasting energy. They need to use AC when they're going in because transformers, as we've seen before, only work with AC. We know that's a definite fact, don't we? Well, maybe not. So the USB, which is, I'm sure you're all familiar with USBs from computers, this is also a kind of transformer. It's a kind of transformer called a switch mode transformer. And it means that you can power things with different voltages out of your computer, even though computers use 5 volts DC inside. How on earth can this be possible? Well, somehow we've got to use DC in a transformer after all. Let's think about what's going to happen if we put DC into a transformer. Here we go, this is a constant voltage, this is a voltage against time graph, constant voltage. We know that if we want to get anything out, we need a changing magnetic field, but the magnetic field is not changing because the voltage is constant, the current is constant, there's no changing magnetic field. So we put that in and we get nothing out. So how can we solve that problem? Well, what we can do is we can switch that DC rapidly on and off. If you go all the way back to the start of this, remember we had the circuit with the battery and we just flicked it on and off and on and off and on and off, and that made a current come out. Well, we can do the same thing. So instead of having a constant DC voltage, we just leave it at 0 most of the time and just quickly switch it on and off, and leave it at 0 and switch quickly on and off. Well, every time you switch it on and off, you get a change in the current. If you get a change in the current, you get a change in magnetic field. If you get a change in magnetic field, you get an induced EMF. So notice there, you get, sorry, when I said EMF, I mean a voltage, okay? So you get a little blip there. Notice it's nothing again here because it's not changing, and a little blip there. Okay, looks okay. We've now managed to get voltage out when we put voltage in, and we've managed to use DC and still get something out, but it looks like it's mostly switched off. So you're going to serially have it flicking on and then going off. Okay, well, that's not really a problem, okay, because what we do is we do it so quickly that it seems as if it's on all the time. So we do this at least 50,000 times a second, maybe up to 200,000 times a second, right? And the crucial advantages are we don't waste very much power, because remember the voltage was switched off most of the time, and because we're not wasting power it won't get hot, and because we don't get hot we can make it really small. So this is why switch mode transformers are much better than ordinary transformers, as long as you've got an appropriate application. Why is there an appropriate application? Well, if you try and draw a lot of current, what you find is you can't turn the voltage on and off so quickly, so it doesn't work anymore because you can't turn it on and off 50,000 times a second. So what you find is that you've got a pretty low maximum power output for USB connectors. So if you want to connect a little fan to your computer or something, that's fine, but if you want to connect a kettle to it, it's not going to work. Okay, all that's really difficult, but if you're thinking, I'll never get my head around that, all you really need to do is to learn the pros and cons. Okay, so here's our pros. The switch mode transformer is working mostly at 0 and just at 5 volts for short bursts. This means it's got a very low power use when it's not connected to a load, so you can leave your USB plugged in, it's not going to be a problem. And it also means that you can make them much lighter or smaller. You don't need to have that great big iron core to transfer the magnetic field. Much smaller and lighter than conventional transformers, but it does have that limitation, which is you can't take very much power out of it. Okay, so that's probably the hardest thing in the whole of separate science, switch mode transformers. If you think it's a bit beyond you, don't panic, just learn these 3 facts.